and your shoulders are frozen, as cold as the night. Oh, but you're an explosion, you're dynamite. Your name isn't Rio Ferdinand, but I don't care for sand, and lighting the fuse might result in a bang. I bet you look good on the dance floor. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now floating in Screamacelica. My name is Kevin Graham and his name is Russell Boyce, and tonight we are on the dance floor of European dreams. Russell, have you ever looked good on the dance floor?
In my wee imagination, probably, Kev. But in terms of other people, I mean, it just gets to that stage, you know what I mean? When you're on the, when you're actually trying to dance, depends, you don't really get many places that play any decent, sort of music. I was all right in a place, Club Tropicana, I think it was called, in Glasgow. It was 80s songs and that. I was getting big licks there, man. But, see if it's listening to, Flo Rida and that, it just like a bam, do you know what I mean? So it's Dad, that's I just stand at the side of a VK Tropical, mate, and look even harder.
A VK Tropical. A VK Tropical. I'm actually surprised at that, Russell. I'm really surprised at that. Did I see correctly over the weekend? I'm spending less time on Twitter now, as it just seems to be publicity, guys who have the intellects are puddles, and proves a reason, like how this country doesn't deserve good things. But did I see on Twitter you won the hardest music quiz on Twitter? Did I see that? Did I see that correctly?
Yes. I did it the 6 at 6 with the third frame who arranges it. And it is the hardest quiz in the world. I got 3 out of 6, man. 50% is enough to win that quiz. That's how hard it is. I was doing cartwheels and doing I phoned my mum and everything to tell her, man.
That's brilliant. I didn't really pick up. I was copied into all the tweets, and I'm going, I think Russell's won that. I think Russell's won that. I took part in it once, and oh my God, I thought I had got everything right, and it turned out I had everything wrong. So, well done. That's a big thumbs up. I ken the third frame listens to that. So, well done, big chap. Well done.
We're flying the Screamacelica flag, Kev. You know what I mean? They think we don't know our stuff, mate. Do you know what I mean? They think we're just up here winging it. We know our stuff, mate.
They all know that I make up the stuff anyway. So that's the whole problem. I just make up my intellect. So tonight, this game. The game they were looking at tonight was on the 21st of November 2006 when Man United travelled to Celtic Park. It was on match day 5 of the Champions League, and Man United only needed a draw to qualify for the knockout stages. Celtic needed to win, and Copenhagen failed against Benfica to qualify. Defeat at Celtic Park would have seen us take our magnificent away record to Copenhagen on match day 6, hoping for a victory. I think we can all thank God that didn't actually turn about after. I think we got gubbed in Copenhagen anyway. I think we got beat 3-0, if I remember correctly, when we went there after we qualified. We lost the first leg. I'm talking old school money here, 3-2 at Old Trafford. And really, nobody held out much hope for us getting any sort of result before this game. Most of the Man United players gave us all the usual small team plaudits, the ones that were well organised, hard working, and that they would need to work for a result. You can the usual sanctimonious urine, which is a toast in a water bottle for a bus on a hard shoulder up a motorway. Just platitudes, soulless platitudes at the gears. Ryan Giggs actually says before this game, it's a game you want to be in, a game you look forward to be playing in. I had my testimonial against Celtic, and it's the Battle of Britain. I hate that term, the Battle of Britain. We experienced it before, and the atmosphere up there was unbelievable. I think the crowd and the atmosphere will demand that they'll be right at us from the start. It's just a massive game with the connection between the two clubs. What's your thoughts about that? The connections between the two clubs. Well, what's your thoughts? Because, for me, growing up in the 80s, going to the football in the 80s, I always thought the Celtic fans had more connection to the Merseyside clubs. in the 80s, when the half and half hats were all the rage, you would see them on the terraces, and you would mainly see Everton or Liverpool ones. Everton more so, strangely enough, especially after Rapid Vienna in 1985. And also there was a thought process at that time that Everton were the Catholic club in Liverpool. That's one claim that's never been proved, but it's also never been disproved either, that Everton are the Catholic club of Liverpool. The Liverpool hats I always just thought were due to Kenny Dalglish. I did think that, and also Liverpool being the most successful team in Europe at that point. There wasn't so many Man United ones. You're younger than me, so what's your feeling about that? Like Ryan Giggs speaks about a connection, but for me, I never really had that connection in the 80s. I never saw that connection in the 80s or the early 90s.
I know, but I think what Giggs is touching on is quite important, because my memory serves me right, there's been a heck of a lot more testimonials, say mid-90s through to present day against United, Man United, usually for United players against Celtic than Liverpool, for example. I mean, my mind goes back to the likes of the 4-3 at Old Trafford. I think whose testimonial was that? Was that Giggs's?
It was Giggs's, aye.
That was a classic. Roy Keane, his testimonial.
I was at birthday games. No, aye.
There was another one I could think of as well, and I wish I could remember it for the life of me. And then obviously there was like the Legends match. It was Rio Ferdinand who was involved against, was it Lubo's?
Aye, Lubo's Legends. Aye. It was a charity game.
Lubo and Henrik. I'm sure Rio Ferdinand had something involved as well. I can't remember what it was, but I think there is a wee bit of a connection, if I'm honest. I would have always said it was stronger with United than Liverpool, but I suppose that is a perception thing.
It is a perception thing. Peter McSherry Mortgages coming. That wasn't a promotion for Peter McSherry Mortgages, but I'm sure if you're looking for any mortgage advice, he might actually be quite good. Connections between us and Man United, it's very meh for me, because it happened when United were a popular team in the 90s. I can get that. I really do get that when United were a popular team, and maybe the younger generation, I know that Declan and JP Mason on the Thursday, they follow Man United as their English clubs as well. Let's see, there's another one here. Peter Ulysses Cox. Everton was founded as St Domingos FC in 1878. So that members of the congregation of St Domingo New Chapel in Breckfield Road, North Everton, could play sport all year round. Bonucci Cellini comes in. Liverpool were formed by some sort of fruit, but definitely not sectarian, Kevin. But I support the team on the banks of the Royal Blue Mersey. For all you out there, if you don't know the words to the song "The Banks of the Royal Blue Mersey," Google them after this. See, for me, the Man United fans caused a bit of bother at both these games in 2006, and for some of them, there seemed to be a simmering resentment towards Celtic. I understand that. I really do understand that. For a certain vintage of Man United fan, having thousands of drunk Celtic fans singing about the IRA in a city which was devastated by that organisation is going to paint us in an unflattering light to Man United fans and Mancunians all over to a certain vintage. Every time we've been to Manchester since those early 2000 games, and especially the two big testimonials, there's been trouble every time. Even going to Man City, there's been bollery. And again, I just think it's the vibe our support maybe give in Manchester with some of the songs that we do sing. I always found some of the Man United fans that I met, especially at the two testimonials, a bit like arrogant. I did find them arrogant. But in the last few years doing this, I've got to ken quite a lot of Man United fans. A lot of the guys worked for FansBet that sponsored us a couple of months back. And they were great, salted earth, home and away guys. And they were basically like us. They were basically had the same background as Celtic fans. Like, they were for cities that were shaped by immigration and the waterways, the ship canals, the Clyde, and it changed my view on them. It really did change my view on the Man United fans. But I agree with the earlier comment. In the 80s, there was more a link to the Merseyside clubs, and as we got into the 90s, it seemed to have been Man United. Now, I don't think there's any sort of close link whatsoever with any English club, and I don't think the Man United fans have got a lot of the Man United fans have got any close link with Celtic now.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's hard to have anything in common with the English teams now in the current climate, because they're so far removed from the realities of football and sport that we live in right now. Do you know what I mean? I think we're still playing a game based on what you can do in the pitch, while they play games in boardrooms and with checks, basically. So I don't really see what Celtic or what gain it would do to any of the English clubs, because all they care about now is building their brands and sponsorship deals, and I don't really see any appeal for them dealing with a Scottish club anymore, even albeit whether it's Celtic or not.
Even at this point, we were far removed, especially when you look at the talent in this Man United team. We were far removed from the riches in the English Premier League at this moment. Sean Curran comes in. Thousands of Irish boys supported Man United in the 80s when I lived in Ireland. See, the first game, the 3-2 game here, I was in Dublin watching that, and I was the only Celtic fan in the pub. I was watching the game in Dublin. I was the only Celtic fan.
Wow.
All the rest of them are Man United fans. And apart from the 5 PSG ultras who were on their way to watch PSG against Derry City, they started supporting Celtic just to back me up. I had a good conversation with them. They were good lads then. There was 2 surprises on this night. One, Bobo Baldé replaced the injured Gary Caldwell for his first game of the season, and this was actually seen as a blow to Celtic's hope.
We've discussed this before. When you see Bobo Baldé in a Gordon Strachan team, now this is Strachan's second season, and Baldy's starting games in the Champions League. It's just alien to me. It doesn't add up. It doesn't. My memory definitely doesn't compute that well. Like, I've seen the starting lineup. I mean, on the lineup, well, not only just Bobo Baldé, Kev, but we keep speaking this summer about giving the manager the tools. Well, this is Strachan's second season, and the tools he has at his disposal to be taking on Man United for a place in the last 16 of the Champions League actually make Angie's current predicament look favourable for me to getting a result against AZ Alkmaar when you've got a 2-0 lead. I'm beginning to think we're not putting any pressure on him at all, because Strachan probably was getting it tight off sections of the fans at this point as well.
He wasn't.
Which shows you, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but you look at that side and what the challenge is in front of him, and I know you'll read out the team, and you think, wow, we've got a cheek to demand tools for managers. Now, where was that then?
I didn't remember this team looked as poor. But what you've got to remember, this is Strachan's second season, and this team is in Gordon Strachan's image. He basically built this team. So by this point, it's his side.
Oh, but that's fickle, Kev, because I'm convinced in 2021, if that was Strachan's team next season or not, the secretary would all be demanding more from the board. And it wouldn't be fair. They had a 36-year-old Neil Lennon in midfield, and a Van der Snow, an 19-year-old in midfield, and a veteran Paul Telfer signed a referee and stuff. No. We're rewriting it. I'm telling you, if this was 2021, we would be blaming the board 100% far more.
Right, Barca Boy asked what pub I was in. It was some pub in the Temple Bar area of Barca Boy. I can't remember the name of it. It was nearly 15 years ago, right enough, so I wouldn't expect to remember the name of it. Right, we'll read the Celtic team then, since we've already got there. The Celtic team that night was the holy goalie, Paul Telfer, Bobo Baldé, Stephen McManus, Lee Naylor, Nakamura, Thomas Gravison, Neil Lennon, Van der Snow, Venegura, Hesselink and Magic Zaravsky. The Man United side that night, this was the other surprise. Alex Ferguson had spoke about bringing up a reserves type side, and he actually fielded his strongest side available that night against us. So the team that he put out that night was Van der Sar, Neville, Ferdinand, Vidic, Hines, Ronaldo, the lesser Ronaldo, as I'm going to call him all the way through this podcast, Carrick, Scholes, Giggs, Saha and Rooney. Come on, eh? See, when you see that lined up against, like, our team, that is utterly frightening, eh?
It's unfair. It's just unfair. Right? I don't, the disparity. I mean, we've spoke before, Kev, about how you looked at O'Neill's team and we were spending sort of similar wages to some of the top six maybe sort of clubs in the English Premier League. Like Sutton would have been on 30 grand, probably on par with, I don't know, Mark Viduka at Leeds was probably on 30 grand a week. It was there was a parity between the sort of, like, not the elite, but already, just in a matter of 5 years from then, you're looking at the disparity, and maybe the first signs of that disparity really, really pulling away. Celtic were trying to spend less, actually make money whilst being successful, as opposed to speculating to accumulate. They were actually trying to balance the books, and then any success would be a bonus sort of thing. And the quality of player and the difference in the United team, I mean, you think then Scholes' peak 31, 32, because he started playing deeper, didn't he? Was less the runs in the box, but he actually got better at that period. Giggs got better at that period. He evolved his game. And then you had Wayne Rooney, was the hottest young striker, arguably in Europe at that time, or certainly in the top 3 or 4. Ferdinand and Vidic is regarded by many as the best ever United centre-back pairing. And Van der Sar had been there, seen it, done it all. What a team. And just the money that team's costing at that point, sorry, just to finish, the money that team's costing in wages compared with Celtic's now, I think the gap is really, really grown from the early couple of seasons under O'Neill to just 4 or 5 years later.
See, when you mention that side, Peter McSherry comes back in. Wasn't there a little Ferguson v Strachan thing simmering under the surface at this time too? It's quite a. I thought that as well, Peter. But when I started researching this game again, it's no mentioned. It's not really mentioned in any of the papers or anything like that. But like you, I thought there was maybe a bit of tension between the two of them, but it doesn't seem to be. My thoughts of the Celtic team are this. We've got a goalie who was one of the best in Europe at this point. Without a shadow of a doubt for me, he was one of the best in Europe. We've got a back four that wouldn't put the fear of death into Falkirk, never mind Man United. We've got a pairing of Gravesen and Lennon in the middle of the park, which was never going to work. And even by this point, you could actually see that Gravesen and Lennon was never going to work in that midfield. Also, a wee funny fact, that first 11 had the longest and the shortest names in the Champions League that season. Snow and Jan Venegura Hesselink.
That is a good fact.
So that's a good fact. Man United, I just hated Ronaldo. Still do to this day. For me, he just looks like a horrible person who doesn't care about his football team. It's all about him. There's no joy in him whatsoever. He's cold, he's narcissistic. I'd probably believe he'd be a serial killer if he couldn't play football. He just seems everything's for him. He doesn't seem to get any joy out of playing football whatsoever, even though he's got a top talent. Unlike Messi just gives you joy. Ronaldo plays for himself, so this result was quite decent for me, the fact that we gave him a bloody nose as well.
It's a debate for another day.
I could see with your face there, man. I could see with your face there.
It's a debate for another day. I think Messi is someone who very much, obviously brings joy in the pitch, but, I think with him and Ronaldo, I think if you ask their teammates, would they rather be playing with them, either of them, or not, they would all say yes. So I would let them do the talking. I think Ronaldo's maybe got a arrogant persona of that, but I dare say he inspires those around him, and his goals have certainly helped out various teammates in various countries and various top leagues that he's won.
But it all seems to make it for him.
That's what it seems like.
It all seems to make it for him. For me, he just doesn't come across as he enjoys his talent. He likes forcing his talent down people's throats. Anyway, this night, Lee Naylor had him in his back pocket. Lee Naylor was the best player on the park this night, which is a phrase I never thought I would repeat after Lee Naylor left Celtic. The game starts and Man United take control without really creating any chances, truthfully. Lennon and Gravison can't get anywhere near Carrick and Scholes in the middle, and Carrick and Scholes are dictating play like 6-year boys stealing a ball off the first years and telling them to get the ball back. You mentioned it earlier. Do you think Paul Scholes gets the credit that he actually deserves as a footballer?
Yeah, I think he does. I think there was a wee bit of revisiting on Scholes by a lot of people as well, to be fair. Obviously it was an amazing career he had and all that, but, see when there was top managers, England, folk could slag off Sven-Goran Eriksson, for example, but he knew a player in that. He dealt at the very top echelons of football, and it was Scholes, remember, who was always put out on the left. Scholes, not Gerrard or Lampard. Scholes, who was always put out on the left, not just by him. So that seemed to always found that interesting, that folk would rather have Gerrard and Lampard in the midfield. He was obviously a great player, like I touched on earlier. I actually think his game evolved when he dropped back into the sort of a more sitting sort of role. It wasn't quite a holding midfielder role, let's be real here, but he wasn't quite, making as many of those late trademark runs into the box that earned most of his 100 or so Premier League goals. You know what I mean?
For me, I agree with this. The best English midfielder of his generation. And Barca boy, real football, people recognise his world-class talent, but not the mainstream media. What I'd actually say is I reckon he was a far better player than Gerrard and Frank Lampard. And also Man United would never have had the success they had without Paul Scholes. I
think you could say that about the other two as well, though, with their respective clubs.
I think you could. I've got a story to tell. The guys I go to the football with were in Cyprus in 1992. And they bumped into the Man United youth team at that point. The class of 92 were on a jolly in Cyprus. And the only one they really recognised was Giggs, because Giggs was the one that had broke through at that point. So I've seen the pictures of them standing there with Ryan Giggs and that. And they were standing having a beer with the Man United side. And they says to them, like, which one of you is the best player? Which one of you is the best football player? And every one of them, the man pointed to the wee ginger guy sitting underneath the tree in the shade going, him. Says, he's the man, out of any of us, he's the one that's definitely going to make it. And that wee ginger guy sitting underneath the tree was Paul Scholes. So I remember them coming back in 1992, going, we met in the Man United team, we have to look out for this wee guy called Scholes. And before you can that Man United team were utterly sure that Paul Scholes was the only one of them that was definitely going to make it, even though Giggs was in the first team at that point. I found that quite an amazing observation by his teammates. I found that.
I've seen him every day as well. It must have been spectacular to watch. His range of passing was superb. As I say, earlier on in his career, he did get a lot of goals. His tackling was awful, though.
I still didn't forgive him for the 2 goals he scored against Scotland in the European qualifier in '99. But there you go. This game, nothing really happens. Man United control this game, but they didn't really create any chances to the 36th minute. And Bobo Baldy gives the ball away to the Leicester Ronaldo, who runs through and goal. Big Arthur comes out and blocks. McManus eventually clears. We were really, really dismal in the first half. When you actually watch the highlights back, we weren't in the game. We were spectating, really.
No, you're absolutely right. It was just utter domination. But the thing that would have given us hope and probably allowed us to do the second half display that we did was the fact that they didn't actually create real chances of note. They never had the keeper under the cosh, for want of a better phrase. And I think we would have probably thought we're not going to have a worse 45 minutes than that. And the worst that we did have was still level pegging. Is sometimes just getting a wee breather, taking stock and thinking, well, things can only get better here, and we're still level. It can kind of inspire you a wee bit now. That first half, United definitely came up with a plan to dominate the ball. I think Ferguson would have been frustrated, though, that they hadn't tested the keeper nearly enough.
With the talent that's in that side, with their front three, they should have been testing our back four far more than what they actually were.
Mm-hmm.
What Stratton does at half-time is he brings on Sean Maloney for a Van der Snow, and he brings on Jiri Jarosik for Zaravsky. And we start better in the second half. Jarosik forces a save with Van der Sar. Scholes fouls Maloney. And this, for me, was the catalyst to the change of the game, because Scholes gets booked. And this seems to knock Man United off their stride, that the fact that he's picked up a booting. This moment, it just spooked them. But again, when you have a look back at the game, Boric was a busier goalkeeper, but he was just doing simple things you would expect Arthur Boric today, cutting out crosses, long-range shots. At no one point were we ever hanging on with our fingertips, Russell. There wasn't any point.
Couldn't agree more. I think, and Celtic was one of those ones where they were growing into the game, if you like. For that's what I felt. It was like they're growing into it, because the blows that United are dishing out aren't leaving a mark. They're not knocking us down in the canvas. You can feel them, but we're still very much in this. And I just think that Celtic, I actually thought Jarosik, see with him, he reminded me a bit of Donati. I don't know why. He reminds me a wee bit of Massimo Donati in the fact that he was never really appreciated for obviously being a more than capable footballer. We signed him from Chelsea, remember? Jarosik.
Was it no Birmingham? Did he no leave Chelsea?
No, he was on loan at Birmingham.
Was he on loan at Birmingham, right?
We signed him for Chelsea. This guy had plenty of Champions League experience. I think he'd played with, I could be wrong here, but I think it was Smerton he played with, who also I think Chelsea signed, but had a great career at Spartak Moscow. He had bags of international caps for Russia, Jarosik, as well. And he just seemed to bring a really calming influence. And, again, like you say, test the keeper. It's actually the Jarosik who goes and wins the free kick for the goal as well. Just with, again, a wee bit of know-how and a wee bit of savvy. So kudos to Jarosik.
Well, let's have a look at this. It happens on 80 minutes and Vidic fouls Jarosik. To call it a foul, I think, has been kind, because I think the big lanky pencil actually played for it. As you actually say, you called him being smart. I just think he actually played for the free kick. If we're speaking the truth, Russell, I think we can look back and say it wasn't a free kick. It wasn't a free kick whatsoever. What I can actually remember for that point, I was in the stadium at that night, and I remember us saying, the wee man can't do this again. He can't score for there again. And when he put the ball down and Van der Sar's lining up the wall, you're still thinking that, the wee man's not going to do it again. We're talking about a world-class goalie here. He's not going to get caught out twice by the same guy taking virtually the same free kick. It's just not going to do it. What we didn't realise, and what Van der Sar didn't realise either, is a world-class free kick, a world-class free kick taker was facing him. And what were you thinking at this point when you were watching this game? Because I know what I was thinking. I was going, he can't do this again. There's no way that he's going to do this again.
It's interesting that's maybe the difference, because you're a wee bit more experienced at this point than me. So I'm at my mate Ian Nairn's house, who's a staunch Rangers supporter, right? But we went there after school because his mum was a teacher there. Mrs. Nairn sadly left us a couple of years ago. Loved her, man. And she was like, just come over, you can have your tea and then watch the football with Ian and that wasn't after school, after work, sorry, because we worked in the same after school. We worked at the same he worked at FES, but it was like you could pick me up at Gladedale, where I worked beside the roundabout in the River House at Stirling, and that like business party. He was like, I'll pick you up on the way. Anyway, we went to Dunblane and watched it there. And I was obviously on the wind-up the whole game, because him and his dad are Rangers fans. I was on the wind-up with them the whole game, and I was actually kind of boasting and sort of animatedly saying he'll do it again, sort of thing. How much I believed of that, it's hard to tell, because I was too lost in the winding-up process that, it was, I don't know, I think Nakamura, the thing is with free kick taker, as you say, a world-class free kick taker, he's got the ability to put it past anyone, and anyone more than once too. With that technique, they're always going to set up their wall the same way. That's the thing you notice with these things. They don't mix it up, goalies and walls. It's always set up like that. So if you could continually ping them time after time in training, time after time in matches, there's no reason you can't do it twice to Edwin van der Sar, big matches on the biggest stage.
No, I think as well, where I'm coming from is Van der Sar's a world-class goalie, and you're going, he's not getting it by him again, and he didn't really need to actually like describe this goal, because everybody can actually picture it, what actually happened. I can shut my eyes and I can still see the ball flying in. I didn't need to watch the highlights to know this is what actually happens, And like the noise when it left its foot, you were going. When it left his foot, you were going, that's in. That I was up. I was already standing up anyway, but I'm already going, that's in. That is in the back of the net. And as soon as it hit the back of the net, the place was absolutely bedlam. Michael Carrick says in his autobiography after it, the noise was so deafening, my ears rang for a while afterwards, after the noise of that goal. As 27 comes in, Wee Stratton's utterly shocked reaction to the ball hitting the back of the net was iconic. It was iconic. Barca boy, I'd love to hear Van der Sar's take on it. Strangely enough, we do know Alex Ferguson's take on it. Seemingly Alex Ferguson says to him, have you no learned for the first time, yeah, beep, 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 when he got back into the changing room.
What did Alex Ferguson want him to do differently though, Kev?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, it's well out his way. It's not as if Van der Sar's left too much space. It is just a perfect free kick. He's no stopping it. There's no way that he can actually stop it.
And Ferguson nor his coaches are setting up that wall any differently from what they did at Old Trafford. Still the exact same format.
I think as well, it's further out in the one at Old Trafford as well. So there's a lot more pace on the ball that Nakamura needs to hit it with. And it is, for me, the greatest free kick I've ever seen at Celtic Park. End of. I can't. Somebody will maybe come in and say this one and that one, but that one, the pressure that was on Nakamura to turn up and hit that, is the greatest free kick I've ever seen hit at Celtic Park.
It's hard to argue with that, isn't it? I like the way it goes. Like, it's actually like, see when he hits it, it's going over the wall. That ball is at least, when you watch the angle from behind, 3 foot, 4 foot over the bar.
Aye.
Like in terms of height, how high it is, and the pace on it, the top spin on it, as well as the curl, for it to dip, but dip just enough so it sneaks under the bar. Oh, I know you don't need to describe it, but I thought I would take the opportunity to do it.
No.
And the spin on the ball, see when you actually watch the way it's rotating, it's like it's fake. Like it's like that's exactly how your dream connection with a free kick, if you tried to hit a curler, that's how the ball would look. Do you know what I mean? With that swerving motion. So I was nearly doing a George Cadetti there. But aye, cool as anything.
Red Scotland, Naka's free kick against United was the ultimate, agreed, Kev. And Facebook user, some technique. What I'm going to say about the technique is, yes, it's a natural talent, but it's a talent that's also practiced. You don't be able to do that without actually practicing hours and hours. Even though you've got that talent there, that's a guy who's actually worked on his talent to be able to take that to the highest level. You've seen guys that can hit free kicks doing parks and that, but they can't do that because Nakamura worked on that, definitely.
Unbelievable, Kev. The technique is a joke. It's something that he's carried on doing his whole career. I mean, I think everyone will remember the footage that went viral of the moving bus. When he pops in a window there, and the amount of folk I think at first wanted to say, "Oh, that must be edited," and yet every Celtic fan's watching going,
"That's no way edited.
He doesn't need to edit it." Believe you me, but aye, it's postage stamp. It's, again, I've said this before on the show as well, and it's so important to get this across. You can practice all you want, right? You can have all the techers all you want, and you could have done it in the SPFL, and you could have done it in the Scottish Cup, and you could have done it in the Champions League before. But with 10 minutes to go, a goal that secures potentially Celtic's first ever last 16 place in the Champions League since it became the Champions League, obviously. But their first ever qualification of the group against that Man United team with 10 minutes to go and 60,000. It's the mental strength, mate, that gets me the most about this. Because the technique he can do, he knows he can do that because he's honed that skill. But can you keep the heat to execute it? And it's just ice cold, ice in the veins, mate. It's just amazing.
It comes from probably not confidence and not arrogance. It's just blocking it out, just going, he could have done that in an empty park. He could have done that with nobody there. But he's done it with 60,000 there because he's got so much confidence in his own talent and technique to get this right. And that is all down to the practice. I mean, Carrick speaks about the noise, and a couple of minutes later, the noise was still so loud it seemed to put off Lewis Saha, who breaks through on goal, thinks he's offside, stops, waits on the linesman's flag. When he realises that the linesman's flag no gone on, he turns round to shoot, and the big holy goalie's out there and blocks the ball. This isn't the... See, when that happened, we all went mental again, But this wasn't the holy goalie's moment in this game. That was going to come a couple of minutes later, where, for me, the referee tries to balance up the free kick at the other end by giving an extremely soft free kick after Maloney jumps in the wall and the ball hits his hand. Thoughts, Russell? I can see your face.
It's tough.
There's no
I think it's one you claim for, Is it one that you claim for?
Mm-hmm.
If it was you, if that was the other way around, I think we'd be claiming for it, no?
Maybe but I just think it was a balancing up act. I think the referee knew he got the Yarasek one wrong. Maybe.
But I think we would have definitely been shouting for it as well, though, either way, especially at that stage of the match. Come on, you shout for everything.
Russell, you're a snooker fan. Nakamura, the only guys that you actually see with nerves of steel that are in snooker or darts, that can actually do it. But it's all down to their technique,
Aye, I mean, it's just, the guys on the snooker table for me are just geniuses, you know what I mean? But aye, you're absolutely right. It's the occasion that they're battling so much so it actually overwhelms the vast majority of snooker players, and that's how they don't make it to that next level, because they could all probably already have hit 147s and things like that in the practice room. But to go out and do it when there's people watching all around the world under that sort of pressure, you need to look just very quickly on that, because we're not talking about snooker, but Jimmy White missing a black off the spot in the world final.
Aye.
You know?
That's pressure,
Aye, that was all that was.
So the referee gives a free kick, and Celtic Park becomes an absolute cauldron. There's swirling scarves, there's catcalling. I'm hunkered down. I'm not watching it. I've got my hands down and gone, no, because it was going to stop us beating Man United, but because I've realised that this win qualifies us for the last 16. I'm gutted that the bigger picture, that this thing that's been built up to be the holy grail, could now be slipping away for us. And there's folk all around us gone mental because they just want to get one over Man United. Actually, they stand back up before the penalty kick's been taken, and just in time to see the big holy goalie throwing himself at the right, saving the ball. What I really like about this, and what I didn't remember about it until I watched it in the highlights, he palms the ball and it lands about 20 yards outside the box. It actually lands outside the box. There's no chance of a rebound. There's no chance of somebody following it up. I think he puts it out for a shy.
It's a brilliant save for that.
It's a great save, eh?
It's clever. It's clever, and that's what the keepers now, I think, get a lot of emphasis put on them when they're saving the ball. Where is it you're actually pushing it to? If you can't hold it, where are you putting it? And United would have been swarming for that second opportunity. They have razor sharp players up front with bags of goals between them. I mean, United are about to enter one of their golden ages, really, with Champions League final glows, with the nucleus of that team. Definitely. I mean, these sort of guys snuff out rebounds. They smell it a mile away. When where the deviation of a ball is going to go, when a keeper saves it, things like that. They're all over it with these guys. They're wily foxes, and Boric has the presence of mind. Obviously, there's a lot of pace from the shot anyway, enough pace to shot. But the actual power he generates, as well as saving it to get the ball to travel as far as it did, is top notch, man.
How many goalkeepers do you see saving the ball and it goes right back into the middle of the goals? 100%. This actually goes out, and as you say, it's a great save. What you say about that Man United team is so true. That is the core of the team. It goes to 2 Champions League finals over the next 3 seasons. This is Man United's last defeat in an away game in the group sections until 2011. They go undefeated for 4 seasons after this, away from home in the group sections of the Champions League. When Boric saves this penalty, you see the Man United players deflate. Right away, you can actually see the shooters go. They know the game's gone. The Celtic players grow 6 inches more, knowing that the game's actually won at this point. They know whoever's up there is looking over us, and we've got this game sorted. It was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. And to get one up Ferguson and the lesser Ronaldo, really, really loved it. Really, it's one of my highlights. A lot of Champions League's highlights at the new Celtic Park, but this was one of the greatest. And everybody was going mental that we had bet Man United. I was going mental going out the ground because I had realised we had qualified. And I always remember about that night. No, a lot of folk had realised we had actually got through. No, a lot of folk realised that Benfica had actually bet Copenhagen. They were just so high on life for beating the best team in England at that point, one of the best teams in Europe at that point. And I'm going, we're in the last 16 with a game to spare. And
which I wanted to mention, I think the last, to do it with a game to spare is one heck of an achievement, Kevin. Isn't it?
Aye. And especially when we didn't win any of our away games. We won our 3 home games, and that's what qualified. After the game, there was an interesting quote by Stratton that I found about this. And he says, in the first half, we weren't even a presence. At half-time, I asked the players whether they wanted to be remembered for that 45 or the next 45. How do managers come up with the moments of clarity and team talks so quickly?
It's clever, eh?
It's really, really clever, eh? I mean, you can just imagine the players reacting to that. He doesn't need to tell them they've been poor in the first half, but he comes up with a phrase which goes like to them, how do you want to be remembered? I think that's amazing. When I read that, it kind of just took me. That is a sign of a decent manager, don't you think?
But yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think you're absolutely right. In that moment, how do you come up with that? Where does that even come from? But it's worked, and it definitely would have played a part. I was actually in a funny quote with him as well, though it was a funny one as opposed to, and it was after the game. He says, "I don't believe it. There must be a rule that says we don't go through. I will wake up tomorrow and find someone has scored an extra goal against us somewhere. I better check teletext tomorrow to make sure."
Well, it shows he is a right dad at that point when he's still wanting to check teletext. I didn't think teletext. What a still existed at I'm going to bring up this by Pedro MC. Correct on it being the best free kick at Celtic Park. The only one that could have bettered it is if the Canyos versus Rangers had went in rather than scalped the bar. Aye, that was decent. But
is that the Scoot playoff?
Aye, it was a flick.
Josh McKinley scooped it. Aye, oh my, that would have been
What I must say about Stratton, I've been lucky enough to meet him in the last 18 months, and I think time's been kinder to him now than what it was what it was at the time. Robert Baker comes in. Stratton is a legend in my eye. Red Scotland actually says Gordie Stratton legend. The Rangers media promoted the not Celtic-minded agenda. Not true. Gordie is one of us. That is true now. Now. I went to a speakers night with him and he done a great half hour about him and Tommy Burns. And if you ever get the opportunity to go and see him talk, go and it was a fantastic night. Listen to him talking about Tommy. Him and Tommy got a real connection. And Tommy got a real connection, and you'll have tears of laughter, but also tears of sadness as well. When you actually see how much Tommy meant to him. Anything else you want to add about that game? Anything else that caught your eye?
No, but I think the only thing I would say is we need to be. Whilst we always talk about disparity in Europe and the financial implications, this game proves that the gulf has always been there, or certainly has been for the last 15 years, and it can be overcome 100%. And if anything, that result should give us a lot of hope for Thursday and think, do you know what? It's AZ Alkmaar away. Do you know what I mean? With a 2-0 lead. Let's have them. That's what I take from watching those highlights. But I just think if we can do that against them, AZ Alkmaar, bring them on. Let's have them. And let's qualify from the Europa League group as well.
Stuart Horan, number 2, comes in. Stratton now gets it. Aye, so does Gavin and the other son who's working at Celtic as well. They all seem to get Celtic. All 3 of them are back there now, working in some capacity. Right, we'll move on. We'll move on to the music. 2006, but I think it would be remiss of us, Russell, not to speak about the news that's happened in the last hour and 15 minutes. The tragic news that Charlie Watts, the drummer of the Rolling Stones, has passed away. I must admit, it certainly took the wind from my sails when I heard it on the radio. I mean, he's a true legend in the music business. And one of the I was talking to Russell before I came on air, and it makes me real. I just thought the Stones were immortal. I never thought any of them would die. I just thought they would go on forever, and they would always be selling out stadiums and releasing records. And for the drummer, the one that always looked out of place, but one of the coolest cats, who's played on some of the greatest rock and roll records ever, to be the first one to go. It's almost up there with one of the Beatles dying for me. I can remember, I was only 5 when John Lennon died, but I can remember the big deal about Lennon. This is maybe not up there, but devastating news, Devastating news.
Yeah, I definitely think a Rolling Stone, the first Rolling Stone to die, is up there with, a Beatle dying 100%. For me, maybe not John Lennon per se, but I remember when George Harrison died, for example. I don't see, I know it's all about perception. I preferred the Rolling Stones to the Beatles anyway. But I think it's huge. It's really, really saddening. When I read it, I'd seen your WhatsApp message. I thought, oh, you're joking. And when I went through the Twitter, obviously, no, you weren't joking. I'd just been, oh, no way. And I looked through the Twitter, I just thought, really sad. And obviously, you've got to take comes of comfort yourself. And I think we're on the same page with this, Kev, is that seeing the Rolling Stones live for the first ever time in my life, in 2018 in the summer, and I am so glad that experience happened, because they've never been back since. Look at the pandemic happened and all that, so there was no opportunity for gigs anyway. And then just as that sort of seems to be maybe easing off a wee bit, Charlie Watts passes away, sadly. So it's really rubbish. And, I think of the band right now as well, obviously, your thoughts with his family, friends and loved ones and all that. And you think of the band as well, and that'll be, the most bizarre scenario for them right now. No, maybe not today, it's just going to be grief. But going forward, it leaves the Stones in a real strange position. Now, I know they've got a lot of session musicians anyway that help with a lot of the live stuff. But this is one of your organs, you know what I mean? This is like,
It's a different time for when Brian Jones passed away in 1969, where we were still young cats at that point. I mean, for me, Charlie Watts always looked like he had walked into the wrong room. He always looked like he was walking in looking for a jazz session. No one that were these guys trying to reinterpret the blues. But he also looked like a guy that wouldn't be messed with, even though he just sat there and his drumming's superb. If you do one thing tonight, go and listen to his drumming on Hey You, Get Off of My Cloud. Listen to the drumming on that. The drumming on that is unbelievable.
It's funny because that got shared today by a musician I know on Facebook, Greg Taylor. He shared it and he was like, you need to listen to what was at the time unusual style of drumming, but is now... but I know he shared it. I listened to it today. That's funny he said that.
Oh, it's one of the best. It's one of the best examples of what Charlie Watts brought to the Rolling Stones. I mean, he always looked cool, and you look at the early 70s Stones when they've all got the leotards on and that, and he's sitting there looking, going, what am I doing here? There's a famous video for the Hollywood Bowl where it's bubbles and there's balloons and all that, and you can just see him sitting there going, hi, what's actually going on here? What's actually going on here? I was like you, I saw him in 2018 at Murrayfield, and I'm extremely glad that I did see them with the longest lineup that they did have. But my favourite quote of Charlie, it's not really a quote, it was caught on camera. And I can't remember where it was caught on camera. He had heard Mick Jagger saying something, and he turns round and says to Mick Jagger, don't ever call me your drummer, you're my fucking singer. So I think that sums up Charlie Watts' attitude. And as you say, he fought their way, his family, his kids, his grandkids, and also with other members of the Stones at this time. It's a sad day for music. So we'll move on to the album that we're going to speak about. It's in the headline, it's Costello Music. That album contains this. The album we're talking about this evening contains the song that was played after the Nakamura goal. And you can hear it, and you hear the crowd singing it as well straight after it. The song was Chelsea Dagger, and obviously the band is the Glasgow band, the Fratellis. The Fratellis are a really interesting story. The band were formed in Glasgow in 2015, and they consist of John, Baz and Mince Fratelli. I'm just going to call them the Fratellis because that's what they were. Now, you ken where they got the name the Fratellis, Russell, eh?
Can work that out.
You can work that out. For anybody that doesn't ken, the Fratellis were the name of the criminal gang in the hit film The Goonies. And it's fair to say that the rise to the top was extremely quick. I mean, they only formed in 2005. They were signed after less than 10 gigs to Island Records, a major record label. They were flown to America to make the album. They had their first single out in March 2016. Their first top 20 hit in June 2006, and they released Chelsea Dagger in August 2006. So in just over a year, they created what would become the Fratelli sound. The album on release, it was released on September 11th, a strange date, 2006, and it spent a total of 83 weeks in the top 100 and has sold over 1.3 million copies worldwide to date. Now, shameless plug, shameless promotion here. If you subscribe to this channel, you're going to be able to win the platinum disc presented to the band for 250,000 sales of this album. It's a massive prize and it's a great prize. Russell, how did you first hear of the Fratellis?
First time I heard them, right, was in the Beat, which was a club behind like a student quite a predominantly student sort of populated restaurant at the time, the Med.
The Meadow Park behind Stirling Uni.
Aye, and it wasn't no Chelsea Dagger they played, because the DJs quite liked playing the odd indie tune, which I always thought was quite cool. They'd always play it'd be predominantly all that nonsense that's out at the time, do you know what I mean, the chart music, but the charts, there was a lot of indie music doing well in the charts at the time. So you'd always get like an Arctic Monkeys tune, Kasabian tune. You would still get like Lila and all that by Oasis played every now and then and stuff, because it was still chart and doing well in the charts. And then they played a song, Creeping Up the Back Stairs. Is that what it's called? Creeping Up the Back Stairs. And that was the first Fratelli's tune I heard in there. So it was amazing to go back to memory lane when I was listening to the album today. And once I got down to track number 9, and that's how I went, that's the first one I heard, because the mind tricks that we always talk about playing on you, Kev, I could have swore Chelsea Dagger was the first Fratelli song I knew. It wasn't.
I know for a fact that Keeping Up the Back Stairs was the first Fratelli song I heard also. I first heard of the band when massive Celtic fan Dominic Diamond had the breakfast show on Beat 106, which became XFM, which I now think is Capital Radio, I think it is now. I'm not 100% sure. And the song that he played all the time was Climbing Up the Back Stairs. And that was on their first EP, I think. And so him and Jim Gellety, who were on Beat 106 at that point, hammered this track. So I got to know this track. StewTube comes in. I'm going to actually put this up. Many people think the Fratelli's first gig was at a club next to the Horseshoe Bar, but it wasn't. It was at an after midnight club show in the Barfly. I thought the Fratelli's first gig was in a bar called O'Henry's, which was across for the Horseshoe Bar, but somebody comes in and says that's wrong. Kevin Banks comes in. Chelsea Dagger is a complete rip-off of the Mac Lads' Bitter Fit Crack. Check it out if you haven't heard it. So that will sound for me. That will sound.
Homework, Kev. Homework. I like a bit of homework.
For me, the Fratellis sound a cross between Half Man, Half Biscuit and Slade. They've got that playfulness of Half Man, Half Biscuit, but the shouty choruses of Slade that Slade made so famous. But it's also hard not to talk about the Fratellis and not talk about Chelsea Dagger, because it became such a massive song over years and years. It still is a massive song, because I think it's a massive song on the North America and the ice hockey leagues and all that, up there with Blur, song 2. That they play after the goals. I mean, the song is named after the drummer's girlfriend. She was a burlesque dancer, and her stage name was Chelsea Dagger. So that was how they got the name of the song. She's good friends with Kevin Miles, who's friends of this podcast. Kevin Miles, who wrote the song "Celtic, My Heart and My Soul." So Kevin Miles' wife is also a dancer, and she danced with Mincy's girlfriend. So that's where the connection comes from. So that's where they got the name Chelsea Dagger for the song. Celtic were the first team to play Chelsea Dagger as post-goal music. That is a fact. The reason being, probably, nobody can actually confirm this, it's probably because they're all mad Celtic fans, all three of them. And I think because Dominic Diamond was punting it as well, Celtic decided to get in on the act and play Chelsea Dagger. And it was played a couple of weeks ago at Celtic Park as well, after one of the European goals. The song's been used in darts afterwards. It's in ice hockey in North America, and it was predictably used at Stamford Bridge as well, just because the Chelsea connection. What do you think of that, Russell? Do you think that's wasted the legacy of the band? That the fact that Chelsea Daggers became so massive?
It's a hard thing to comment on, because, I mean, at the end of the day, to me, you want your tracks to get as big as they possibly can. If you're in a band, at the end of the day, you're in a business as well. And, it's rock and roll to be successful, in my opinion. And why would you not want as many ears hearing your track as possible? Does it then form opinions in some people that perhaps that's all the band's known for, that's what you then tag them with, and that's all you associate them with? Perhaps. But that's many battles. The war that was won was they had an album that sold 1.3 million tracks, and they've had a song so popular that's been played in Premier League football matches, SPL football matches, and in Canada, ice hockey, to name but a few, as well as being used on adverts, the lot. And that's because of the quality of the tune. And whether a tune loses its quality because it's played so many times is a different debate altogether. It's the fact that it's getting played that many times. I would say you'd doff your cap at that and you'd be very proud of its success if you're the Fratellis.
See, for me, it's allowed them to have a career because they'll always have that royalty check coming in. It's allowed them to actually carry on and make music where a lot of bands from that period have disappeared. I've got a hot take on this. I've got a hot take on a lot of bands round about this time. I listened to this album again, and there's some really, really good stuff on this album. Henrietta, the Backstairs song, Whistle for the Choir,
Yes.
Baby Fratelli, which was used in Hot Fuzz as well, another royalty galore.
Baby Fratelli, I wanted to talk about that one, was really nostalgic as well. I didn't know that song was called that, right, for a start. But it was absolutely brilliant to hear that again. I hadn't heard that in so long. Baby Fratelli, man.
It was fantastic. I remember it. I obviously remember it for the album, but I also remember it having a major part in one of my favourite films. And a film, and like a film I always watch when it's on as Hot Fuzz. I always remember it being like a major part of that. Facebook user, you need to register and your name will come up. Whoever you are, should be our new national anthem as part of the Scottish rebrand. Well, that's interesting. That would be interesting to see Kieran Tierney and that Dane as the national anthem. Vince the Livable Stoners, another great song for the album. Oh, the Facebook user Sue, he's forgot to log in again. Hiya, Sue. Right, for me, this album's good. It is really, really good. It stands the test of time, but the legacy of this album and the quality of this album has basically been lost due to Chelsea Dagger. They're now just seen. There's now just seen as a band that the fat blokes at the darts danced to. like if you came up, the fat blokes in the Super Mario costumes actually danced to.
Oh, I think you're being harsh.
But no.
They're not just seen as a band like that. Come on.
Probably in the wider sense, they're seen as that band, but not the guys who like their music. Also, for me, it's linked to Tim Lovejoy and Gavin and Stacey. Like a lot of guitar music round about that time, if you were championed by that vacuumist twat, which is Lovejoy, or used on that programme, it did your band nothing but harm going on in the future. I think it really did. If you ended up on the Gavin and Stacey soundtrack, I think that was a death nail for your band. It made you music that insurance salesmen listen to in their cars. Like I can think of like number of bands like the Cooks, probably the Libertines and that were all used at that time. They never survived being championed by Lovejoy and championed by James Corden. They too destroyed so many bands and somewhat of rubbish bands right enough that it should never be forgotten. And I think the Fratellis' legacy has been tarnished by the fact that Chelsea Dagger has been so successful with them, and also that they've been lumped in with this whole load of what the press called indie landfill round about that moment. That's just me. But when you go back and listen to this album, it's a cracking album, and everybody should revisit it. And they should revisit their new stuff as well. They should actually go and listen to their new stuff as well. This band were not a one-trick pony, but unfortunately, they've been lumped in with a load of one-trick ponies and a lot of guys who I think are just vacuumist twats who basically paid to a lot of bands' careers. That's just me, right enough.
No, I mean, I think the Lovejoy thing, I mean, he was someone that, at least I think it was quite refreshing that a football host was trying to promote music. I don't think, it's just easy to be cynical all the time, Kev, but at the end of the day, it was quite a refreshing thing. I think football and music go hand in hand in a lot of ways.
Obviously, that's how we've got the show.
Wow.
But sometimes when you've got somebody, for me, Lovejoy's fake.
But he was an influential person.
He was an influential kid, but he was fake. If you ever read his book is absolutely rubbish. He doesn't think football was invented. If you asked him anything about Chelsea before 1992, he wouldn't have a clue. For me, there was a lot of stuff where I think being linked with Lovejoy, I think he was a fake guy, and I still think he is a fake guy. I've sometimes watched him on, what is he? His cooking show now. He does a bloody cooking show on a Sunday morning. And he's still,
morning kitchen or something,
and he's still trying to promote bands, eh? But you do know for a fact that he never listens to them. You do know for a fact that he doesn't listen to half of them now. And I reckon it was the same during his soccer AM days. I've just got no time for him. And Gavin and Steffi, the amount of rubbish it was on that as well, it became massive. So I feel sorry for the Fratellis. I'm sure they didn't feel sorry for themselves. They've had a great career. But that's just me.
No, that's fair. Strong views, I like that.
Aye, it's me. And it really got me annoyed when I listened to this album today. It really got me annoyed when I listened to the album.
Well, good stuff on it.
Aye, a lot of good stuff on it. And when folk go, and if you go to Sunday, the Fratellis will go, oh, that's the Darts song. And that just really, really gets my goat. It really does. I get you. And that does really get my goat. Well, thanks for everybody joining us tonight. I hope you have all enjoyed it. Me and Russell hopefully will be back next Tuesday night, and I'll see you tomorrow for the bulletin. And remember, just be kind to each other, and everybody go and play a Rolling Stones track tonight. And remember Charlie Watts. Thanks very much. See you later.
Well said, mate.